just started, so I didn't forget it. All right, my computer says 7:03. Maybe we should go ahead and get started. People can trickle in. I think I set it up so that you can continue to just register and join.
All right, whenever you're ready.
All right. So I just want to welcome everyone to our second housing forum, and I want to thank you all for coming this evening. We've had a lot of conversation. There've been a lot of meetings going on, so I appreciate the time everyone's taken to come tonight. So if we go ahead, yep. So for tonight's agenda, we're going to be talking a little bit about the goals of the plan moving forward. And I just wanted to remind everyone and let everyone know that if you missed the first forum, which we had back, I think, in March, the recording and the PowerPoint is on the Housing Commission's webpage of the town website. If you have any trouble finding it, you can just send me an email. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Michelle Gora, forgot to do that. Economic and Community Development Coordinator, and I've been a part of the affordable housing team that working on our plan for the town. So sorry, I forgot to do that at the beginning. So if you have any questions or need to try to find the information from the first forum that we did, where we really looked at all of the data and housing in Washington and where we are right now, that is on the website. So tonight we're going to take a look at affordable housing in other neighborhoods. We're going to talk about some of the strategies that the plan has, that we're considering for our plan, and then look at the housing, our needs compared to some of the other towns in the Northwest corner. And at the end, just about the next steps in our process. Okay. Just to give a little bit of background for people who missed the first forum, back in 2017, the state passed some legislation saying that every town must have an affordable housing plan by July 2022. And we applied for a grant to help work on putting together our housing plan. It was a grant run through the Department of Housing. And so we were fortunate enough to have Jocelyn Ayer from the Northwest Hills COG be able to help us put this together, because it's been quite an undertaking, doing all of the research and really looking at everything. The goals of the plan, as outlined by the state, are that we have to lay out a strategy to meet the housing needs of future residents and workers. And we will need to be specific in our plan as to the goals moving forward. And so we will talk about some of those goals as we look at what we've done so far. I also just wanted to point out that the team that's working on this affordable housing plan is comprised of the Housing Commission. We have Lisa and Leslie and Shane from the Housing Commission. And there are some spots or some openings on that commission. So if housing is of interest to you, you might want to reach out to Lisa or Leslie or myself. We can, invite you to a meeting and you can get in touch with our selectmen and we can go through that process. But I would encourage people to take an interest in this because we have some work ahead of us. So we have the Housing Commission working on this, as well as a team to just work on this plan, which includes Dean Sargent from the Selectmen. He's a selectman in town. Janet Hill from our Zoning Commission. Wayne Howman on the Planning Commission. Ralph Averill, who's a current member of the Housing Trust and a former Zoning Commission member. Myself and Lindsay Larson, who is a community member interested in housing and volunteered to work on this. So we appreciate the work of everyone working on this. And I guess I'm going to turn it over to Jocelyn to sort of bring us up to speed.
Thanks, Michelle. And so yeah, so I'm Jocelyn Eyre. I am the Community and Economic Development Director for the Northwest Hills Council of Governments, which serves 21 towns in Northwest Connecticut. And I've been working on housing issues, especially in the small towns in our region, for the last 13 years. And one of the things I do is help staff the region's Regional Housing Council, which is made up of the nonprofit housing organizations from the small towns in our region. One of the first things that people always want to know, which is a very good question, is what do you mean when you're talking about affordable housing? How do you define that? So again, if you were at the last forum, you heard this, but we feel like it's always good to re-mention it at the beginning of every forum. We're using the state's definition of affordable housing. So that is housing that costs less than 30% of the income of a household earning 80% of the area median income or less. In Washington's case, we use the Litchfield County area median income. So for example, if you are a household of 4 people and you're making $82,000 or less, you would qualify to live in affordable housing, and that housing could not cost any more than 30% of your income. Once you start paying more than 30% of your income on housing costs, it just leaves, basically, not enough is left over to pay for all of the other things that a household needs to be able to pay for, including healthcare, transportation costs, childcare, and then, having discretionary funding to support local businesses. In addition to that, in order to qualify on the state's list of affordable housing, some entity has to be kind of monitoring those units to make sure that they remain affordable, so that they in fact are being lived in by households that meet those income limits, and that those households are not paying more than 30% of their income on housing. Currently, Washington has 43 units that qualify on the state's list of affordable housing. And this kind of shows you how that breaks down in terms of different types of units, and how you compare to some of your neighboring towns. Washington has basically 2% of its housing stock as affordable housing. This shows you what some of your neighboring towns have as well. At the last forum, as Michelle mentioned, we did go into some depth about the Washington's current housing stock and what the housing data tells us about that housing stock. So I'm not going to go back into all the details of that, but it is important to obviously to know what you have in order to make goals and strategies for moving forward. So I'm just going to summarize what the housing needs assessment has shown. But first, we are going to do a lot of polling during the forum because we do want to get a lot of input from all of you who came tonight. So we're going to test out the polling with you all by launching here the first polling questions, some of which we went over at the last forum. So if you were there, you might know them. So the first question is, how many Washington households report paying more than 30% of their income on housing costs, which is, you know, the definition of being housing cost burdened. And the second question is, how much did the median sales price in the town of Washington increase over the last 5 years? So everyone should see those polling questions in front of them and be able to vote.
Can we be unmuted in this whole discussion, or do we have to keep quiet?
You can be unmuted. You know, I think we do have a presentation to give, and
okay, all right.
But if you know, if you have a question about what's being presented, you know, I think we'd like to try to get through the presentation part and the polling questions.
Okay.
And,
okay. All right.
All right, it looks like 16, 17 people have voted. 18. All right, I'm gonna end the polling. Share the results. So the correct answer to how many Washington households report paying more than 30% of their income on housing costs is 323. So 8 of you were right on that. And in the last 5 years, the median sales price in Washington increased by $380,000. So the 5 of you that reported that are right. So again, just to briefly summarize what the housing data analysis showed, 87% of your housing stock is the same type of housing, single family detached homes, which are, you know, the most expensive type of homes to, you know, purchase, own, and maintain. 70% of your homes have 3+ bedrooms, meaning that there is kind of a lack of downsizing options for folks who don't want 3+ bedrooms. There are a lack of rental housing options in Washington. 12% of Washington's homes are occupied by renters versus almost 20% countywide and 30% statewide. And many of the single family home rentals in Washington are very expensive. There is limited senior rental housing in Washington, and you currently have 43 affordable homes, which is 2% of your housing stock. As we mentioned, over the last 5 years, there's been a very large increase, most of which happened in 2020, in the median sales price in town. And 323 households report being housing cost burden, meaning they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs. Lindsay, I think this is your.
Yeah, thanks, Jocelyn. So Jocelyn's going to spend a bit of time talking about our specific strategies that we're proposing. But first, I want to highlight the overarching goals that we came up with really to guide the development of this plan. So we were talking amongst ourselves and what's going to be really important for the town of Washington. What do we really need right now? And we also heard from community members in putting these overarching goals together. So the first one is creating first-time homebuyer options. So helping first-time homebuyers move into Washington. So that might include younger families or people who grew up here who are trying to move back to town. Encouraging development of downsizing options. So we do have an aging population here in the town of Washington. So making it easier for people to move into smaller homes and out of larger homes that maybe once housed families, but now there's only a couple people living there. Support the development of rental options for seniors and young people families. So again, Jocelyn just mentioned how few rentals there are that are affordable, particularly for young families and seniors in town. And then finally, help keep seniors in their homes. So making sure that people can stay in the homes that they have lived in for many years, if that's what they choose. And we decided to set a unit goal, something to really strive towards. So we settled on 30 new affordable housing units in the town of Washington over the next 5 years.
So we have a polling question for you about this. Do you support these 4 overarching goals for the housing plan? And do you support the unit goal of 30 new housing units over the next 5 years? And everyone should feel free to vote. But it looks like we've got 19 of 27. So I'm gonna stop the polling just to keep us moving. Share the results. So 79% of you said yes, that you support those overarching goals. Sorry, I'm just trying to write the results down too. And then in terms of the unit goal of 30 units over the next 5 years, 58% of you said yes. 26 said no, I think it should be higher. And 16% said no, I think it should be lower. All right, so now we're going to talk about some specific strategies, and you'll have the opportunity to express your opinion about each of those. We've organized possible strategies underneath the heading of each specific goal that we just talked about. So the first goal is increasing first-time homebuyer options, and some possible strategies that we've discussed in the Housing Commission meetings are encouraging the private giving of land or funding to either the Washington Community Housing Trust, which is your nonprofit in town that does currently build, own, and maintain rental units in town, but also homeownership units. The picture on your right here is the Vincent property, which has 3 affordable homeownership homes on it that were recently built. One of the units was a renovated farmhouse. So encouraging private giving of land or funding to either the Washington Community Housing Trust or Housatonic Habitat for Humanity, which is also currently doing a project in town to allow them to create more first-time homebuyer homes. Another possible strategy would be to work with Steep Rock Association if they are offered a property that is not necessarily appropriate for conservation, they could, you know, let the donor know that another possible option for donating would be, you know, the Washington Community Housing Trust, for example. Increase awareness of down payment assistance and free first-time homebuyer education classes that are available in the area. And I don't know why we have that twice. That must be a typo. So I think those are the ones we wanted to talk about under first-time homebuyer options, and we've got a poll here. The questions are, did you know that you could donate land to help create first-time homebuyer options? And do you know that Washington property owners could qualify for tax deductions for donating land? And did you know that you can subdivide a lot for affordable housing if your parcel has not yet been subdivided since 1955? All right. Anybody else who wants to vote, jump in there. I'm going to end polling here a second. All right. So it looks like majority of people were not aware that they could donate land. And a majority of folks were aware that they could qualify for tax deductions. And most folks did not know that they could subdivide a lot for affordable housing. All right. So we're going to go on to the next overarching goal, which is downsizing options. So I think we saw this a lot in the resident input survey, interest in, again, options that weren't 3+ bedroom homes. So maybe a 1 or 2 bedroom home that was accessible, you know, first floor bedroom, potentially having lower maintenance issues. So some possible strategies that could be employed potentially to create some more downsizing options would be to allow either duplexes or 2-family homes by site plan review, to allow townhouse style homes up to 4 units attached in and around the village business districts, allow the conversion of existing larger homes to 2 to 4 units, and remove, so that's currently allowed, but only in buildings built before 1950. So the strategy would be to potentially remove that requirement and just allow any existing larger home to be converted. Or to create an overlay zone in and around each of the town's 4 village business districts that would allow more diversity in housing in those areas. And these are all kind of basically zoning strategies to allow the market to potentially create some different types of housing than what exists currently in Washington. And before we do the polling questions, just in case folks don't know where your village commercial areas are, this is a map of Washington. This is your zoning map that shows the 4 kind of village commercial areas in town. And those would be the ones that potentially a strategy of an overlay zone, or potentially allowing, say, townhouse style homes would be, this is proposing that those types of homes be allowed just in those village business districts. So then I think we will launch the polling questions on this. So the questions are, would you support allowing two-family homes where soils and septic capacity allows? Second is, would you support allowing townhouse style, again, up to 4 units attached in the village commercial districts? Would you support allowing the conversion of existing larger homes to 2 to 4 units and getting rid of the requirement that it be built before 1950? And would you support an overlay zone for the village commercial districts to allow more diversity in housing options there? All right, it looks like most of you have had a chance to respond. So I'm gonna, oh, there's one more. All right. So it looks like 76% of you who voted said yes to allowing two-family homes. 86% of you said yes to potentially allowing townhouse style homes in the village commercial districts. And just to be clear, of course, any kind of zoning change would have to be, would be considered by the zoning commission, and obviously would go to a public hearing with a lot more detail than we're providing here, but we're just trying to get people's initial view on whether these are worth considering. And in terms, it looks like 86% of folks said they would support allowing the conversion of existing larger homes to 2 to 4 units. And 86% said yes to an overlay zone. All right. So now we will move on to the next goal. Rental options for seniors and young people. That was also something that a lot of residents in the resident input survey identified as a need. So some of the possible strategies would be to support the development of additional affordable rental units by the Washington Community Housing Trust. This shows you a couple pictures of the existing properties that the Washington Community Housing Trust owns and manages, which again, we talked about a bit at the last forum. And then another strategy is helping the Housing Trust build its resources to address these needs by getting the word out to residents who could consider selling land less expensively to the Housing Trust or donating land or funding. And I'm not sure we have any polling questions. Oh, we do, okay. So the polling questions are, oh, I'll launch them first. Do you support the idea of the Housing Trust building additional affordable rental units in town? Would you be interested in serving on the board of the Washington Community Housing Trust? And should the town's Housing Commission help let residents know about opportunities to donate land or funding to the Housing Trust? And would you be interested in volunteering on the town's Housing Commission? As Michelle mentioned, there's some space on the Housing Commission currently, and we'd love to hear if people are interested. This is anonymous voting, so we won't know if you said yes, but we would encourage you, again, as Michelle mentioned, to get in touch with her or Leslie or Shane or any of the members of the current Housing Commission if you're interested in that. And you could also let Michelle know if you're interested in the Washington Community Housing Trust. Great, it looks like most of you have voted. So 82% say yes to the idea of the Housing Trust building additional units. And 4 folks said they'd be interested in joining the board. 95% of you thought the Housing Commission could let residents know about opportunities to donate land or funding. And 4 of you are interested in potentially serving on the town's Housing Commission. Terrific. Okay. The last overarching strategy is helping to keep seniors in their homes. And some of the possible strategies for that would be ensuring the town zoning regulations allow residents to add wheelchair ramps or other ADA requirements without needing a special permit or variance. Promoting energy efficiency programs. Again, a lot of homes really all over the region are older, bigger, draftier, and harder to heat and cool. So promoting those programs that can help folks save money and reduce energy costs. Consider establishing a housing rehabilitation loan program that can provide funding and technical assistance for accessibility modifications or other needed upgrades for income eligible homeowners. This is something that some of the other towns, smaller towns in the region have gotten a grant to create basically a revolving loan fund that can help income eligible homeowners make those modifications as needed in order to help keep folks in their homes. And continue to provide transportation, social, and food services to seniors that can help them. Do we have some polling questions on this? The polling question is, would you support the town creating a housing rehabilitation loan program?
Mark, couscous or brown rice?
Still, shut.
All right, so it looked like 91% of you said yes to exploring the idea of a housing rehab loan program. And lastly, some of the funding strategies that the steering committee has been considering in order to help implement really any of the other strategies that we've talked about. One is regularly funding the Housing Commission line item in the town budget, and having a portion of funds go to the town's affordable housing fund, which could be used by nonprofits for basically figuring out whether certain sites might be feasible for creating more housing. Another funding option that the steering committee has discussed is a town ordinance that would allocate a portion of the conveyance fees that are already collected by the town to be deposited into the town's existing affordable housing fund. So at least one town in the region does this, had passed an ordinance that allowed them to use a portion of the funds that they are already collecting for an acquisition fund in their town. So this could be something similar to that. So I will launch the polling questions on that. Do you support the town regularly including funding in the town budget for the town's affordable housing fund? And do you support allocating a portion of the conveyance fees that are already collected for the town's affordable housing fund? All right. So 77% of you said yes to supporting the Affordable Housing Fund in the town budget. And 64% of you said yes to allocating a portion of conveyance fees. All right. So, I guess before we go on to the next part of the presentation, do people have any questions about the specific strategies or ideas of other specific strategies that you will want to talk about or questions you want to ask?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Marvin Meltzer. I'm over in New Preston, and actually I live in New York. We've been up here though for about a year and a half because of the pandemic. But this is fine. This is actually fascinating to me because I do affordable housing in New York. I'm an architect, and we focus on affordable housing in New York, and I'm just fascinated by the difference, probably mainly by the numbers that you're talking about, obviously. And some of the questions that I have are they totally unrelated to this, but I'll try them anyway. When you say you're going to do 6 units in 5 years, that doesn't sound like a lot.
30, I think, is the goal.
Is that what it was? 30, I'm sorry, I saw 6. But how is this generally done on properties that are donated, properties that are purchased? How does this normally work? Who funds this? Although I'm not familiar with all the agencies. they fund the purchase of it, who funds the construction, and I guess at some of this, as you mentioned, that the zoning would have to change in some of this. But the big issues are, I know, in any, for instance, just to make a very slight comparison, if you do it in New York, somebody's got to pay for the land, somebody's got to pay for the construction, and generally a lot of that is funded by the state or the city or other agencies. Is it work pretty much the same way here?
Yep, pretty much the same, only on a very much smaller scale.
Yeah.
I think actually all of your questions are good ones. And the next thing we're going to do is show you a quick video that shows what some of the affordable housing looks like. Well, in Washington and also in some of the surrounding towns, which actually I think answers a lot of the questions that you just asked. If you don't mind, I might show that and then we'll come back.
No, absolutely. I mean, this is fascinating to me, and it's very interesting to me. The more I can learn about it, the happier I would be. Go ahead.
Terrific. Yeah, awesome. But yeah, I think a lot of those are going to be answered.
I have a question.
Yep.
Is there any consideration to the lot coverage requirements that would perhaps could be changed to afford for more density on a given lot, so that we could have cluster housing or that kind of, or more than 2 units on a given property where we have adequate septic and so forth? I mean, right now our lot coverage is pretty small for, it seems to me that we could do something in that area to make it more affordable to build units on a given piece of land.
So I think that's the idea behind the overlay zone concept in the village commercial centers would be, yes, reducing the minimum lot size where, well and septic could be accommodated,
I understand, but the village districts are fairly small in terms of acreage and availability.
Yeah.
We have significant areas of land available or potentially available in the town that could be developed for higher density housing. And part of the problem is that we have regulations now that are in the way of being able to do that, unless the affordable housing criteria is implemented by a developer. And that could be litigious and difficult.
Yes. So your suggestion is not necessarily to limit it to the village commercial districts.
Well, yeah, I mean, for example, we have Quarry Ridge and the new Habitat took over that development, but there are other areas of the town where condos or apartments or as was suggested, a cluster housing of affordable cluster housing could be done, but the land use regulations are prohibitive for that. And so where we have adequate land, we don't have a regulatory access.
Right.
And I think that's a real impediment. The only way around that is for a developer to call in the affordable housing criteria because we're below the 10% or whatever it is threshold. And that's a litigious problem for a developer to undertake.
Right.
So it's a really, I think we're looking at a zoning strategy that we have to consider if we're really going to be able to meet a 30 unit goal.
Right, agreed. Thanks, Dimitri.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna share this, which will hopefully answer some other questions. Oh, wait. Here we go. All right. Let me know if you can't hear it.
The Northwest Council of Governments did a study of all the towns in their region. In Washington, there's over 1,000 people who commute here to work.
People are moving away because really it doesn't make sense to live here. It's too expensive. And we're not going to change the food prices. We're not going to change the gasoline prices. We can, very reasonably, provide lower cost housing.
It's been clear over the past 10 years that there's a much greater need for rental housing than we supposed.
I think the average age is something like 60, and we need to attract young families or the town will die.
The state projections are, you know, in 20 years, by 2040, the population is going to diminish by about 22% to 2,400 people. And the population right now is about 3,500.
People need to understand that in order to have a vibrant community, one needs to have a good variety of economic incomes in it. And we need to take care of the nurses and healthcare workers, etc.
The affordable rental housing is really the entry point for a lot of these young families. But it's also a place where kids who grew up here can come back and establish themselves. The fact is that the people who move here are doing the work that otherwise they might have to drive an hour to get here. And that's essential for the town. So it benefits the town and it benefits...
Yeah, and they're paying rent. They pay it not more than a third of their income, but that's the way you can live nowadays. You can't pay more than a third of your income.
You know, where are we going? I mean, because this is essentially becoming, you know, not literally, but, you know, figuratively, it's a gated community. You know, the population here is going to drop, as I said. The strain that's going to put on local government, as you know, they're having difficulty finding volunteers now for the fire department, EMTs.
When I was looking out, I was watching people walk out to talk, go back to their homes, check their mailboxes. They tend to look out for each other. Kent Affordable Housing built this, South Common. It opened in 2003 with 24 units. We have a range of people from a newborn who was arrived just after the family arrived to live here, up to elderly, and they work all over town. Some of them are retired. The 4 acres here, they belong to the town. It's not on the road. The entry road was built. It wasn't doing anything but sitting here. People who've lived here at Cougaman have moved on to the parcel program, been able to move into homeownership. Some have moved to Bonnybrook as they got older and needed a 1-story house. We've had a couple of high school valedictorians here. We've had members of the fire department. We've had people who work in the service trades. There are people who work as school staff, about as random as any other slice of Cornwall.
The new unit in the back has 2 2-bedroom and 2 3-bedroom units. Included in the folks who live there are some essential workers. There's teachers, there's a school bus driver, there are folks who work in retail, there's someone who works at Le Bon's, there's someone who works at one of the restaurants. We are really filling a need, I think, very much in the community. And many of those people would have to live, 45 an hour away.
At our town center rentals, we have people that are in the 20% of AMI, the 50% bracket, the 80% bracket, and then we have some unrestricted units. Department of Housing feels it's really important to have a variety of different income levels. The types of people that are in our rental units are everybody from teachers to some landscapers to a chef. Generally speaking, they're very much members of the community and have been members of the community for a long time, and they just need a little bit of assistance.
The moment I found out that I was going to be able to get the apartment at 4 Shepherd Road, it's a 1-level apartment. I really needed to be able to get into a space where I didn't have to do stairs, and it was much easier for me to move. I had a lot of back issues. I really don't have words to express how much they have helped me. and how much I appreciate it. They were really able to work with me as far as how much I was making and what I could pay, and they were able to get my son and I into one of the apartments.
The two houses here, brand new. The farmhouse, we totally renovated. Everything in it is new. Windows, roof, all new mechanicals. The way we set this up is we own the land underneath this, and then we do a 99-year lease. We are responsible for, when the properties are resold, to see that they are resold to people meeting those same area median income levels. The ideal thing would be to find other houses like this that we could take the land and subdivide. But right now, the cheapest house in Washington is about $549,000. Typically, there's around 70 to 80 houses on the market. Right now, there's 24.
Where we are right now was built in the 1980s. It was very controversial. There were stinging letters written to the paper. It was not at all certain that people would be happy with it. In time, and it didn't take very long, it was understood to be essential and respected and enjoyed. Our small towns are not asked to pay for construction or operation of affordable housing. Therefore, property taxes in our towns do not increase by adding these types of housing opportunities. Construction funding comes primarily through the Connecticut Department of Housing, and we're very grateful for their essential partnership in creating new affordable housing options here. Our property managers also carefully vet all applicants who wish to live here, including income and background checks. Most applicants have close ties to the town already. They're moving to be closer to work or family. The professional property managers we hire to manage day-to-day operations, like Tammy here at Sarum Village, are terrific.
And the other thing that I think is very important as grandmother is that we've also brought some children to school.
There are solar panels at Stewart Farm on 8 of the 13 units. The first summer, their electric bills were $9.12 a month because the sun was out beautifully. I've given you all the upsides. The downside is there's not enough because it takes 5 years to build a complex like this.
The good part is there are good people like Jocelyn and Maggie Cooley, who I work with up in Cornwall, and lots of other people, the Bacharachs over in Kent. There are just lots of dedicated people that, put not just their financial resources, but, their time, which is more precious than anything, into, meeting these needs.
The Cornwall Housing Corporation has benefited from the generosity of people in town, from the Kugelmans, who gave the money that permitted the purchase of this lot 10 years ago, when we had to suddenly come up with the money to buy the lot on which Bonnybrook stands. People were hugely supportive.
We received a donation of another 4-acre parcel here in town, so we're hoping to move forward on another project fairly soon. Abraham Lincoln said, "Public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed." And so the public sentiment has got to be accepting, here's the vision, after we've had town forums and discussions, all of you have had input, that we've got to implement, this plan that we've come up with to try and reach the goals that we set.
If you want to be able to go out to eat and have somebody wait your table, that person needs a place to live.
The way that affordable housing benefits a town like Salisbury is that it brings fresh life into the town.
I hope that the video will show people sort of the banality of affordable housing in our towns.
It's a real benefit to the town, but to the whole region. And every town needs it.
It's not charity, it's an investment. That's my top headline line.
Negative voices are usually louder than positive ones. If your town is currently creating an affordable housing plan, they need your participation now.
All right, so hopefully that answered some of your questions. And I think we just have a couple more slides to tell you what else is next in this housing plan process. And then again, we'll open it up for questions, comments, ideas. But let me just go back quickly to the slides. Just in case you are all interested in more information about Washington's housing data and how it compares to some of the neighboring towns, I just want to mention that we did just release this regional housing needs assessment, which includes Washington and the 20 other towns in our region. And that is all available on our website. Again, just a couple points of information. We do have over 10,000 households in our 21 towns that are housing cost burdened. As we talked about earlier, 33% of Washington households report being housing cost burdened. And this shows you some of how, again, how that compares to some of the other towns in the region. Probably no surprise to you, but home sales prices have been rising, again, especially over the last year. As we spoke about earlier, they've risen by, the median sales price rose by $380,000 in Washington over the last 5 years. The average sales price in Washington in 2020 was $1,181,000. So obviously that's making it more challenging for folks to get into the housing in Washington. We also know that, for folks who rent and might want to own a home, access to ownership is limited. This chart shows you, compared to your neighboring towns, what the gap is between what a median income renter in Litchfield County could afford and what your median sales price was in 2020. So a median income renter household could afford a home costing $115,500. And your median sales price is $840. So that's quite a large gap. And there's a gap in every town in Litchfield County. But Washington's is really up there compared to some of the other towns. In addition, the report found that 46% of young adults ages 19 to 34 are currently living in a parent's home, which is probably not because they like living in their parents' basement. It's probably because there just aren't very many other options for them at this point. So there's a lot of other information in that regional housing needs assessment. If you're interested, you can go to the COGS website, and we have a housing page with a lot of information on it, including a link to that video you just saw. We did a whole recorded webinar series about affordable housing in Northwest Connecticut, and that report all on the northwesthillscog.org website. And then I think, Lindsay, you were going to cover kind of the next steps in the process.
Sure. Well, just really quickly. So we've made it through those first 5 steps. We're here at our second community forum for the public, that's shown in that red text right there. So this will be our, I believe, last public community forum before the adoption, but there'll still be plenty of chances for your input and your comments. And we really appreciate you all joining us here today, and definitely hope you'll continue to stay engaged throughout this process. So the next step will be coming up with a draft housing plan for the town of Washington. And then there will be a public input, public comment period. So we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that draft plan. And then the goal is to actually adopt that plan by the end of the summer, I believe. And then of course, all the real work begins. So yeah, we'll open it up to questions, comments, ideas, I guess whatever you want. So you can use the chat box or use the raise hand feature. I mean, we're a small group, so we could probably just allow muting and unmuting, although raised hand seems to help with that.
I wish you all a lot of luck. Those numbers you just showed up are astonishing to me. How you achieve it is beyond me. I can't figure it out. So I think the housing prices and how they've risen in the last year, and the reason they rose, and which we don't really have to discuss, and issues about just affordable housing in general, and how does all that mesh together, I think is really a major issue. And I just want to congratulate you all for trying to do it. Hope you will do it. But those last statistics really kind of overwhelmed me in what seems to be a struggle ahead. So I just want to wish you good luck on it.
Thanks, Marvin. Lindsay, did you see the question in the chat box?
No, I'm not getting anything in the chat. I'm wondering if that's only going to you.
Oh, it says, what are the plans for disseminating this information for the general public, i.e. taxpayers? So Michelle, do you want to talk about that? Or, I mean, I think, again, we're holding these public forums and hope as many people attend as can attend. All of the monthly meetings of the Housing Commission are obviously open to the public. And once the housing plan is drafted, again, it will go out on the town's website and be disseminated in various ways. I'm sure we'll put a link to it on a town newsletter, right, Michelle?
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I was looking in the chat for the question. So what exactly was the question?
About disseminating the information to the general public.
Right. So, yeah, exactly what Jocelyn said. We'll continue to post any of the meetings, and I don't know that we're planning to have another forum. We'll have probably a town meeting about the plan for adoption of the plan. And of course, we will continue to have the Housing Commission meetings monthly, which are always open. If you go to the Housing Commission's page on the website, you'll be able to find the agenda with the Zoom link if you're not already signed up for the alerts through the town's website. And I think it's always the second Tuesday of the month. So, and if you go to the Housing Commission's the page on the town website, you'll also find a link to the video, a link to, I'll post this forum, and there's also the last forum, which had a lot of the data, and any work that we have moving forward will get posted there. So you can always watch there as well.
Great. I did get another question. This one is from Brian. It says, wonderful, informative video. How are the housing plans addressing the issues of diversity, racial equity, and inclusion? Everyone in the video was white and mostly older. Fair and equitable housing should be a catalyst for diversifying our communities. How is the Housing Commission advocating for or addressing issues of diversity?
I guess most of the people that were in the video were part of the nonprofits working on building the housing. And those people are sort of reflective of our community. Anybody here from the Housing Trust could speak to this, but I know there are non-discrimination requirements when accepting applicants for the housing. I think the vision or the mission of the Housing Trust and the Affordable Housing Plan is to do the best we can to diversify the housing so that we can open up opportunities for everyone, whether it's diversity of age, diversity of race, of income. I mean, right now we are predominantly single family multi-bedroom homes on very large lots. And by diversifying our housing stock, hopefully we will be able to diversify our population as well.
Right, and I think I'm just reiterating what Michelle said in a different way, but the goal very simply is to make the town of Washington more accessible to a variety of people than can currently access the housing in this town. So that is a big part of the long-term goal, to just make it easier for all different kinds of people to live here. Matilda, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, just wanted to say, I think that film was excellent. I think many people should see it. I think this presentation is wonderful. And I'd like to emphasize what someone in the film said. This is not charity, it's an investment. It really is an investment in this town. To have young people coming here, to have the diversity of the people we're looking for, we all need that. I think it's an investment. Thanks for what you do, and I will help when I can.
Thanks, Matilda.
Yeah, Jocelyn, I'm not seeing the chat. So if there's anything coming up in there, for some reason, I'm not getting it. I did just see Dimitri raise his hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, my experience is that the more information that goes out, the more misunderstanding occurs. But nonetheless, I think it really is incumbent upon you to make sure that the critical value of this information and the need gets expressed widely in the community. If we don't get a groundswell of understanding that we are in a critical situation in terms of our services, in terms of our young people and young families and so forth, people are going to react to this in very screwy ways. And I think we have to make it a very simple, fundamental issue. And that is that we need to be able to provide housing for the people who work and live in this community, whether they're young or old or whatever. And the more aggressively you can get this information, the more widely disseminated, the better. And it's going to have to happen before your public hearing as best you can to get the information out as you're developing it, so that you're not blindsided by a lot of silly squirrels running around at a town meeting giving you a hard time over non-issues. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Dimitri. If you have any thoughts on other ways we can share, promote, advocate.
Yeah, well, for example, I mean, have a booth at the farmer's market with information in flyers that you can hand out to people. You know, have various businesses have some kind of pamphlet or some kind of something that can be given out to customers as they come and go. You know, get the schools to talk to their faculties about supporting the issue. I mean, the educational industry is the largest employer in the town of Washington. You know, very few teachers, as Matilda knows very well, I'm sure, very few teachers can afford to live in this town. Well, what does that mean? That means a teacher has no investment in the community that they're teaching in. And to have a teacher living in a community where they're receiving the children of that community is essential. And that's the kind of simple thinking that we need to be able to get at. So, you know, there are lots of ways to get information out, but I very often think that a piece of paper in somebody's hand goes a lot further than telling them about some website somewhere that they can go and check out. I mean, that's nice, it should be there, but it's the direct contact and the direct effect of somebody saying, look, read it, this, do this, or even direct mail so that they have it in their post office box and they see it more than once. Otherwise, you know, you're going to find yourself digging a hole at the end of when you get to a town meeting. And I really don't think we can afford that kind of disruption.
Great ideas, Dimitri. I wrote them all down. Thank you.
Hi, Maria, I see your hand up.
Hi, I just wanted to say that I've been very fortunate to be able to move back to Connecticut, and I am now living in affordable housing here in New Preston. I got very lucky that way. I just want to testify that, you know, first, I'm a senior citizen and I could no longer keep my own home, a house, because it's just a lot of work. You have a house, you have a hobby for the rest of your life. I moved here from Florida. I've been here now 3 years. I have a very nice place here in New Preston. And my sons just live down the road a piece. My biggest concern is as I'm getting older, you know, the public transportation is non-existent here. The ability to, I have to be able to drive to go anywhere. And with the pandemic, I've found that I've been more isolated than ever before. So just to emphasize that the idea of public housing, senior housing, you know, in such a rural community like Washington. Now, I grew up in Connecticut. I lived in New Fairfield. In you know, I moved to New Fairfield when the only thing they had was a stop sign at the four corners of 37 and 39. That was an awfully long time ago. And, you know, now I couldn't possibly even afford to buy my house in New Fairfield, let alone move back there. But just to reiterate, the idea of senior housing, public housing, is such a great idea. My only concern is that if you don't have the transportation issues taken care of and some of the other issues, especially for senior citizens, it's going to be a hard road to plow. For young people, it wasn't available to me. I married when I was 18, 19. I was lucky to be able to buy a house. I couldn't put my name on the house because I was under 21. You know, I'm really aging myself, but that's the way it was. I couldn't even vote until I was 21. So today things have changed an awful lot. So I look at my grandchildren and I don't see them having the opportunity to buy a house. And it's too bad. It's really a shame that they can't afford to buy a house. So that's my, and I just sent a message to Michelle, just a note, because I know that wait lists can be unusually long. And I'm curious if there is currently a status set up for the wait list, because I know they're talking about senior housing in Washington Depot, but I haven't heard anything about, you know, if there is a wait list set up yet. So thank you. A very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. We do know that there is a wait list for all of, with the Washington Housing Trust, which manages all of the rental housing we have in Washington. And because units are open so rarely, people have sort of given up putting their name on the list. There's so little movement of people out of the rental. So we believe the need is actually longer than the wait list, but I don't have those numbers in front of me.
Matilda, yeah, I saw your hand up.
I thought what Dimitri had to say about a paper and the booth at the farmer's market was really good. But also heading off people's squirrely opinions might be by saying, how many people, you know, like sort of taking a poll, how many of the people in the various businesses in our town actually can live here? How many people drive and how far do they drive to get here? How many town volunteer organizations like fire and ambulance that we all really rely on are in need of members. You know, to say that to people, to say, we need an influx of people who can't afford to live here right now. And these are the reasons we need them. Put that sort of thing down on those papers.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I will note we did an employee survey as well as the resident survey, and I can't remember those numbers offhand, but we were asking those kinds of things of people who worked in town. So trying to get a sense of that group, how many don't live in town and how many would like to in the future. And I apologize, I don't know those numbers offhand, but really important to be aware of.
I think the results of that survey were in the first forum, so we can look back and get that information. Thank you, Matilda.
Well, I don't see any other questions or comments. Certainly, if anyone has any other questions, comments, feedback. Michelle, did you already give everybody your email address?
You know what, let me put it into...
I don't know if you can chat with everyone, so you might just have to say it.
I'm not sure. I'm getting some chats coming through, but not all. But I am on the town website. I'm putting it in right now. Did everyone see that in the chat? It's mgora@washingtonct.org. If you have any other questions, if you want to get involved, if you want somebody's contact, you can't seem to find the video, whatever it is, just feel free to reach out and I'll help to try to get you in the right place.
Great. And again, if you know, as Michelle mentioned, all of the information from the previous forums is on the Washington Housing Commission's webpage on the town website, but if you can't find it, Michelle volunteered. But really thank you everybody for attending tonight, and you know, we hope you'll be with us as we move through this process of developing a draft plan and presenting that, and then going through the process of getting feedback and adoption. So thanks.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jocelyn. We have a meeting next week, right? So see you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.